There we go. All right, welcome everyone to January's 2024 kickoff meeting for our the Inland SoCal Housing Collective General Meeting. I appreciate you all coming and joining. I know that there was a couple of other meetings I have heard about that were overlapping and conflicting with this, but I'm grateful you guys are here. And you should have received a calendar invite for the year for the next 12 months. So look for that on your calendar. If you don't have it, go ahead and send me a chat or send me an email. I can make sure that you have that information. So today we have an exciting agenda as always. We have a guest speaker who will be starting from Rise Economy, but we also have some time to talk and to share and discuss some of the regional priorities in the second half of that. It's a little bit interactive, so I wanted to give people a heads up now. So then that way, if around 1:30, they're in front of their computers and can participate in kind of some survey and some small interaction, they'll be prepared during that time. So I wanted to just make that known now. So let me scoot over so I can properly introduce our next our speaker and provide an intro for them. So we have here there you are. We have Doni. He is the Southern California organizer for Rise Economy. Prior to joining the Rise Economy, Doni worked as a capacity builder with the Los Angeles LGBT Center, where he trained and developed the capacity of professionals and organizations providing care to LGBTQ and foster youth. So it's been a while since we've had Rise Economy join and present and share to us. And he's going to share with us a little bit about some of the campaign and housing work that they have going on in the Southern California region. So Doni, I think you have sharing rights, so go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much, Melanie. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation. Alrighty. So yeah, hi everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Doni Tadesse. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the SoCal organizer for Rise Economy. And I'm here today to talk to you about one of our kind of priority campaigns. It's an issue that we've been advancing at Rise Economy for some time now, and it is the issue of ownership transparency in housing and businesses throughout California. Before I jump into that, I just want to give folks a little bit of background on who we are. As Melanie mentioned, it's been a while since we've been in this space. So maybe since the last time we've been in, we have a new name and we've gone through a bit of a rebrand. So we were formerly known as the California Reinvestment Coalition. We've been working predominantly in corporate accountability with regards to essentially anti-redlining work, encouraging banks to reinvest equitably in the communities that they're in. And today we're focused on creating a more equitable society where Black, Indigenous people of color have the access to resources and opportunities to build generational wealth. We do this through a few different strategies, right? So we seek to support leaders throughout our communities. We're a member coalition. So we have nearly 300 member organizations throughout California, and we seek to support leaders, build their capacity to take power back from racist systems and build agency and control over their own success. We focus on advocating for policies, practices that promote racial and economic justice, that address the root cause of inequality, redlining, and systemic racism. And we work collaboratively with frontline groups and organizations to achieve our goals, their goals, and we seek to build partnerships that create lasting change. And so here are a few of our campaigns that are active at any point in time throughout the year. So our work can kind of be separated into a couple different buckets. So we certainly do policy work, and that's something that I'll talk about today. Housing justice is big for us, as I mentioned. We do a lot of anti-redlining work with regards to bank advocacy. And so this continues into our policy work. We support the community ownership of land. We have quite a lot of land trusts within our membership, and we see, the transition of housing, of land from the speculative market into the hands of communities as being a way of advancing not only generational wealth but stability for Black, Indigenous people of color, and low and moderate income communities. And then LLC owner transparency is what I'll be talking about today, so I'll save that for after this slide. But in essence, our entry point into this issue was the concern that corporations, LLCs, were increasingly buying up our communities with not a lot of accountability to who they were and how they were conducting business. So I'll speak to that a bit more in the next couple of slides. And then the center here, we have our public bank work, or essentially our public option work. So as we are addressing the harms of the current systems of capital that exist, we're envisioning new systems, which include public banks, which are banks owned by cities, municipal governments that provide an alternative to essentially like collecting taxpayer funds or public dollars. And instead of it being housed in, a Wall Street bank that would then, charge excessive fees and invest that money in perhaps harmful enterprises like fossil fuel companies or companies that cause harm to our communities. It can be invested in the public, and any sort of like revenue, profit that is generated will then benefit affordable housing development, small business development, and all around community development. So we've been working since AB 857 was passed. This was the bill that allowed for the creation or the chartering of these public banks throughout cities and localities. We've been working to build up the East Bay Public Bank and Los Angeles Public Bank. So working on their charters, their applications, and organizing folks to really lead that charge. There's also a state level campaign going on as well for a state level public bank. And then lastly, on this section here, more on the sort of consumer side would be our work for Cal Account, which is a fee-free financial service account or fee-free debit account. This is to address the issue that a lot of folks in California, particularly low moderate income communities, particularly communities of color, are either unbanked or underbanked, which means that they rely on sort of secondary sources or systems for financial services. So things like check cashing, payday lending, often things that are more expensive and predatory, and really not conducive to financial wealth or financial well-being. So we've been working on the implementation of this fee-free debit account, and it's going through a feasibility study now. So we're very excited for some of the next steps there. And then the last pillar here is bank accountability. So this is probably what most folks know us for. This is our work with banks, in particular with the Community Reinvestment Act. This is the law. This is a federal law that says that banks have an obligation to meet the credit needs of their communities. This is like our nation's premier anti-redlining law. I think a lot of folks here probably will know the CRA pretty well. But this is what allows us to meet with banks and advocate for more community reinvestment dollars into affordable housing development, preservation. Essentially, what makes it so that banks really care about what our communities need. And so often this comes up in mergers, where we help negotiate community benefits agreements. And this is where a bank will say, this is how we're going to meet the needs of the community through these particular programs, through this much investment in LIHTC, this much for investment into first-time homeowner mortgage programs, and then we implement that through our member organizations. And then through this bank accountability, while perhaps there is a big focus on housing, small business development, this is also an opportunity for us to advocate for more responsible activity from banks. So clamping down on the financing of fossil fuels or other forms of climate degradation, encouraging them to invest in broadband access to meet that digital divide that exists. And then also for them to not lend to problematic landlords, right? So if they are financing serial evictors, folks that we know are not great for the community, first, they shouldn't be doing that, and two, they shouldn't be receiving credit from their regulators, CRA credit for making those kinds of loans. And then lastly here, we are advocating for a state-level version of the Community Reinvestment Act, essentially to make this more robust, to include more financial institutions, and essentially to create more funding sources for affordable housing development and preservation. I think we'll be back next month to discuss a bit more on the state CRA and then the changes to the federal CRA. So I won't go into this much further, but of course, if you have questions and you want to chat separately, that I'd be more than happy to do that. And so what I'm here to discuss today in particular is this issue of opacity or the lack of transparency in the ownership of property, real estate property, right? Whether it's commercial or residential housing and businesses in California. As it stands, owners of rental properties are able to shield their identities from the public and skirt accountability through the use of shell limited liability corporations or LLCs. So they are able to create, many of these kinds of companies whose sole purpose is just to own another company and further obscure the ownership of that property. And what this allows, this kind of opacity, is it really allows impunity for bad behavior, whether that's like landlord negligence. This can cause, neighborhood blight, and ultimately it destabilizes communities, families, their finances, the work routines, children's educations. And then it also obscures their true market concentration. When we're advocating for more affordable housing development or for tenants' rights or for other methods of housing justice, we often run up against, this perhaps a narrative that most landlords are mom and pop landlords, or that there isn't a full understanding of the market. And this kind of opacity makes that even harder. It's possible that on one street you have many apartment buildings that are all owned by the same company at the top of that web, but the residents are none the wiser, and then code enforcement officials are also none the wiser, and it's taking them a long time to connect the dots to see that perhaps there are patterns of negligence or bad behavior. And while our entry point into this work has been housing, this issue is also really commonplace, unfortunately, in labor, right? So this kind of opacity is common amongst employers who will skirt various labor laws that are already on the books. And what happens is that the means of accountability are really limited. So if there are instances of lost wages or stolen wages, it's going to take time for workers to first even get any kind of justice from the means that are already available. But by the time these cases are resolved, it's possible that the owners have already dissolved the LLC in question and then have just started again with a new one, and the liability often does not follow into the new one. And so justice is much more difficult to obtain. And so maybe with a focus on housing, who are the players, right? So we're talking about limited liability corporations, real estate investment trusts, and corporations. Folks might know LLCs. This kind of ownership structure was invented in 1977 by the Wyoming State Legislature as a method of separating the liabilities from business owners from their sort of like regular personal lives. And this was only really legalized in California in 1994. Fortunately, since the liability portion and maybe the promise of LLCs has changed, and now today it is often a method of obscuring ownership and providing anonymity rather than its perhaps intended purpose of shielding business owners from liability from their company. So as we're thinking about, corporate landlords or this kinds of these issues, as I mentioned, we're often hearing that these are mom and pop landlords, these are small landlords that we're probably expecting too much of, and that our housing justice initiatives are unfairly punishing. But according to Redfin data, this is maybe a little bit outdated, but the trends still hold true. In the last quarter of 2021, 75% of investor purchases were paid in all cash. So these are not, mom and pop landlords. This is not, a family that has like scrimped and saved to buy one additional investment property. These are large corporations. And unfortunately, they're making these purchases with really no accountability nor transparency from the public. And so I have just one example here. This is from a collaborative research project that we did when we were at California Reinvestment Coalition with SAGE. And this was to look at the LLC network for Swami International. So these are the LLCs that we've been able to connect back to Swami International. And as you see, and this is just, there's potentially even more. So you have all of these LLCs connected to individuals within the family, within the broader enterprise, all essentially owned by Swami International. And if you were to pick just one of these LLCs, one of these enterprises, there would really be no way of knowing that they are connected all the way back to this large corporate landlord. And that's because there's no transparency. There's no way for the public to really access this information. There's no way for the residents of these buildings to know that the real owner is Swami International. So what's the solution? The solution we're envisioning is transparency. So as it stands today, to form an LLC, a person really needs to disclose less personal information than it takes to get a library card. And this is like a fun, quippy way of thinking about this issue, but that's really the reality of it. It does not take much information to form an LLC, to do business in California in this way. And we think this needs to change. So we are working on a bill. This is not our first effort at this bill. This is a 2-year bill. And our bill actually seeks to amend the registration process for LLCs to require that when that entity is created, the name of the owner of each person or each person with substantial control. You'll often hear this called the beneficial owner. So this is just the person who has substantial control over the corporation. So our bill would make it so that when they create this entity, they provide this information and publish it in the business registry maintained by the California Secretary of State's office. that's the office that processes all of this information. And so we think it makes most sense to house it there. So this would be a very simple change, right? You wouldn't need a separate form. It's really almost just one more question on that form, which is just who actually owns this corporation. There are examples of this outside of California, very few. We would definitely be, pioneering this kind of transparency. New York just recently passed in their most recent legislative cycle a similar bill to have transparency of LLCs in their state. Unfortunately, the public registry that was passed in the original bill was negotiated out in final discussions with the governor. So it's a little bit weaker than the kind of bill that we'd want to pass here. But it is an example of this kind of transparency in a big state, maybe similar to California. And then at the federal level, there's the Corporate Transparency Act. This was passed in 2021 or signed in 2021. And the goal of this law was to combat illicit activity. So this is more focused on issues of tax fraud, money laundering, financing for terrorism, and more of an international focus. And so this law will require certain businesses that meet a certain threshold to submit this information to the US Department of Treasury. And this is more of again, like a financial crimes enforcement. So it's a bit different than what we're envisioning. We're not necessarily focusing on, the financial crimes aspect of it, but the lack of transparency and the lack of accountability that exists today. And then there's also no public registry. So law enforcement officials would have access to this, but individuals, advocates such as us would not have that access. And we think for the purposes of transparency, it's really important for that public registry to be there. So this concludes kind of maybe the content pieces of what I wanted to share. And so we're currently working, as I mentioned, on this bill, the LLC owner transparency bill, and we are finalizing, author, the bill language, and we should have more of that coming soon. But as we are moving this bill along throughout the legislative cycle, it's really important for us, of course, to have support for this bill, but maybe even more important is to have maybe examples that folks have, any stories of the impact that ownership opacity has had in their work, in their communities, whether that's in housing and anything that you're experiencing in your communities or through your work. So if folks have any of those examples, any of those stories they'd like to share, that would be a great way of supporting a bill like this. And I'll, of course, share my contact information, and then also a sign on to a bill proposal that folks can take a look at if you want to stay kind of in the loop of this bill idea. But that's all I have for content for folks. I think we have time for Q&A. Great.
Yeah, go ahead, Ayako.
Oh.
Hi, Doni. Thank you so much for your presentation. So interesting and such important work. I wanted to let you know that I attended a kind of a state of the market seminar a couple years ago, and the private equity firm that presented said that the single family ownership, rental, and resale was their best performing asset class. And that's shocking. And again, why so many investors are interested in buying up single family homes, competing with middle income and lower income families. So thank you for pointing out this very important topic. It's very real. And we need, and I agree with the transparency will help with understanding what's happening in the market. So I did have a question about the law that says that the name of the person who owns the LLC must be revealed, but how does that help if, say, there's a corporation, the corporation can change CEOs multiple times, so why would it track with the person who can jump around to many different companies when it's really the company that owns the single family homes, not the person who happens to be in charge at that time?
Yeah, and it's pronounced Ayako or Ayako.
Ayako,
Ayako. Ayako. This is a really great question because folks often maybe confuse like officers of a corporation, like a CEO from the owners. Sometimes, often, maybe in smaller businesses, these things are like the same, but it's not necessarily always the same. So we're looking for the owner information. So it wouldn't necessarily be just the CEO or the manager. It would be the person who has like actual ownership of that business. So that would.
Okay.
Yeah, and if that changes, they, would have to update their filings and their periodic filings with the SOS. So it would be captured there.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work. So important.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for the question. Rosina, I think you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Doni. Nice presentation. I have a question related to your earlier slides where you're talking about the account and, the issues that the underbanked and unbanked are constantly facing, right? And I know that you work very closely in making sure that banks or financial institutions maintain lower fees or give the right products to serve everybody who's entitled to all the banking products. Are you is Rice Economy doing anything to work with the check and cash in places which are not upheld to any type of regulations, but they are the ones that are charging more? And really, most of the underbanked and unbanked go there because, first of all, maybe for lack of awareness, because they're still afraid to go into banks, but that's where they go. And these are the organizations or companies that are really making money out of the underserved and underbanked population.
Thanks, Rosina. Yes, they are the ones that see that that gap and then swoop in with worse products, more expensive products, predatory products. And you're right, there is not a lot of protection for our communities from these kinds of institutions. And so our work in that field isn't necessarily with these, businesses themselves. I don't think they'd be very open to advocacy from us, but we work with other folks working around the rights of consumers, where we often lobby the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau, the DFPI in California, for these kinds of maybe common sense standards that you're mentioning, whether it's like a limit on like the fees that they can charge, the ways in which they're advertising, how they're targeting certain communities. And so we've been part of advocacy around around those issues. So that's how we've been addressing this. So it's like addressing the bad from a regulatory standpoint and then trying to create more positive alternatives.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Jesse.
Doni, good to see you. I wanted to just dive in a little deeper on, it was sort of brought up. What is the transparency is important, but is there a strategy for doing, enforcing anything specifically? So let's say that, we know who bought a particular piece of property. Is there any strategy for which we're going to try to get them to do what should be done in that specific scenario.
Yeah, so I'll speak to enforcement in two ways. So there's enforcement of like the law itself, right? This transparency law, this disclosure of who actually owns it. So in New York, they have a pretty substantial like financial fees or fees to hold folks accountable for not submitting this information. But maybe your question is, okay, we have this transparency. We know who's doing the things, like let's say the bad things that we're concerned about. What next?
Yeah.
So that is, of course, maybe a bit beyond the scope of like this bill, right? We're trying to get transparency, but what we're hoping and what we believe will happen is when you have transparency that's facilitated through this bill, it makes the other things that we've fought hard to win more effective. So the tenants' rights, wins that we've had, the enforcement agencies that are doing this work that are spending too much time and effort trying to connect these dots and approaching every single maybe violation as like an individual case rather than this large web that is owned by the same company. We're thinking it'll make that more productive and effective. And then once we have this information and we're doing the proper market analysis, we can come back with more maybe robust enforcement language or new laws that can address these issues.
I recommend exploring the legality of owner occupancy overlays within zoning. I know there's a lot of issues that would arise legally, but I think it could be a tool to use. For example, I've had a lot of experience working with folks like this. I actually worked with one, a syndicator, before joining the nonprofit sector. I worked for Core Capital. So we would do exactly that, purchase foreclosed properties at auction. And part of the reason I got into this business is because I was the guy knocking on doors saying, we just bought your property at auction. What are your plans? And had somebody, try to, unfortunately off themselves in front of me. So it was quite an experience. And I also dealt with Invitation Homes under Blackstone, who's now its own separate company, and saw the predatory practices they used to gouge, some of them were former owners who became tenants, and they would require, 1-year lease minimums. If not, they would get, hefty additions to their rent, meaning $500 extra a month until you sign that 1-year lease. So if you're in a transition period, that creates a myriad of issues for you, right? And our solution to that was sort of, look, if we can't beat them, let's join them. So when I was with NHS LA County, what I was thinking was, since we had access to federal funds via the NSP2 program at that time, I said, let's see how we can work with these investors and help them do better business as the community, steward, right? That we are as a nonprofit. And unfortunately, we didn't get very far because they didn't care to do anything, community related or oriented. And their biggest concern was, hey, can you help us source more properties, right? And we were willing to do that as long as they, we work with them to help hopefully source a first-time home buyer, low-income home buyer, et cetera, and get the outcomes that we were looking for in those specific scenarios. So I see still a lot of work on that end. I think SB 1079 is a huge help and has created opportunities for us to intervene. However, we still need the money, and that's coming in the form of, as you guys know, the foreclosure intervention program that's coming out that hit the FIP money. So hopefully that does create some opportunities. But here's where I still see a lot of issues too, and I want some advocacy, and that's around the tape side. So when we're like Fannie Mae, for example, the only ones that I've seen that has a community pool, but even that community pool, it's region wide. So it's not like you're focused on like our group's only Inland Empire. So it's a few counties in Southern California versus the entire West Coast, right? And so there's logistical issues and then also monetary issues where even their smallest pool will be a minimum of $30 million. Right? So we cannot compete with hedge funds. So before these even see the auction block, they're already being picked up by investors. So we're always a few steps behind. And what I'd like to see is more of these tapes being offered to community members, and either we as community members and or organizations need to come together and pull our money together to be able to buy these and split the logistics of liquidating and managing to those properties, or we need to create new opportunities that have smaller funds, that we can actually afford, and also maybe more region based, right? So for example, that could be part of some CRA, right, activities where it's like, well, if you are going to liquidate any REO assets or any, it needs to be done in this manner, and you can get additional points by liquidating them in this way, specific to regions that have specific needs, and to folks that are going to steward those properties going forward. Anyway, I'll stop there. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse.
Hey, Donnie, this is Fabian. I want to bring about MPHS, couple of things. So I deal a lot with loss mitigation and a lot of assets, asset managers and hedge funds and what have you. So a couple of things. When you're talking about the LLCs and the corporations, their scapegoat is that they hire third-party management companies. And what they always say is at the end of the day, it's on them, it's not on us. They manage our properties, they follow their protocols. We're just the owners, investors on it. Number one. Number two, when you estimated that 75% of in 2021 that many of the homes were paid in cash, that statistic is incorrect. Many of those properties were purchased by mom and pop investors, and they were utilizing private money or hard money, so it doesn't show up as a recording as a Freddie Mac Fannie Mae loan. So many of those numbers are manipulated when it's not really that kind of cash. And then thirdly, what you're seeing right now for many hedge funds or funds, REITs or what have you, that are engaging in buying assets, especially when they're buying paper from Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, or HUD. What they're looking at right now is the understanding or agreement, if you will, is that they have to agree when they buy these tapes that they have to try to modify these families before they actually go into foreclosure for many of these servicers, investors. And what we're seeing right now, that's why we don't see a lot of REO right now, because they're trying to create workout solutions for these families out there. So you're seeing a lot of that right now. It's not where they're going to go in and go in for the kill and start foreclosing. They're trying to do some workout solution or rewrite the paper, do modifications. So it's a little bit of a lot, but going back to that LLC, you'll see that many LLCs, and the reason I say that because I own a number of LLCs, and the reason we do LLCs is not necessarily to hide our identity. It's more for tax purposes, because it offsets a lot of our capital gains, and it allows us to get out of properties, and then at the end of the day defunct them and then move on. If somebody really wants to be diligent about finding out who owns many of these LLCs, especially if they're not really big hedge funds or, as mentioned earlier, corporations with officers and board members and stuff, which, you could always do your due diligence and find out who they are. I mean, it's going to take some time and effort, obviously, but when you're doing it with when you're getting your EIN number from the franchise, or you're doing the county recorder, the Secretary of State, you can get a lot of that information from them as who owns what. And a lot of these investors, especially when it comes into buying single family residences, they got scattered sites all over. Multiple. I know one particular fund, that I'll end with this, that every time they buy a property, they create an LLC. They don't use one LLC for 30 properties. They create one LLC for that property. And when they either sell it as a flip, or they restructure it and put it in their portfolio, they will defunct that LLC and then put it into either that they sold it, or they put it into now a C Corp, S Corp, or what have you. So, I mean, there's a lot of little tricks to the trade. I think that it's a lot easier to find out if you're not a major corporation who actually owns it. I'm getting calls all the time from individuals in the industry calling me up as the owner of the LLCs and S Corp and C Corps. They're getting my information. It's not very hard to find. But a little bit more transparency, I do agree with you, is good for everybody, because now it puts everybody on the spot. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Fabian, and would love to maybe talk offline a bit more, but maybe just to respond to just a couple of points. I know we only have one more minute. As we're doing this kind of ownership transparency work, I think it is important to note that the very concept of LLCs aren't, a bad thing. And that's not what we're, alleging as we're looking for more transparency. Like our organization also has an LLC, right? So a lot of nonprofit, developers and nonprofits have LLCs because they do have a function. It's a very important function, but nowhere in that function is the anonymity necessary. And that's really what we're fighting against. And for some smaller ones, it can be easy to get that information if you're subscribed to certain sort of lists, which then cost money. But we're hearing from a lot of organizations that have been trying to do this kind of mapping work, how difficult it is. I think even in San Francisco, it took them over a year, the San Francisco Chronicle, to map out all of the ownership the ownership information in the Bay Area alone. So I just wanted to end with that, and I'll put in my contact information in the chat, and then a link to our policy proposal if folks want to sign on, just a way to keep plugged into what's next with this bill.
That's great. Thank you so much, Doni. I will, if you want to drop your information in there, that way we could follow up with you, or anyone can follow up with you if need be, or I could connect you guys offline if that is needed. So let me get my computer ready. So the second half of the meeting, we wanted to I had planned to do a little, as I stated in the beginning, to do a little sharing, a little bit of polling, and to be a little bit more interactive than we traditionally are in this general meeting type setting. So over the course of since October, I've been just collecting feedback, with talking with a few others, writing down stuff in just different meetings that we've been in, collecting information from all our pillars, and doing some one-off of what are the region's priorities, and what in priorities in terms of where is their opportunity, and where are their investment opportunities specifically, and then additionally, what are some of our challenges, our pain points as a region. And so today, I wanted to go over a little bit of that feedback that I've been collecting since October, and show it to you in kind of this map and that I've created, and kind of tried to piece together a lot of the feedback and organize. And then I'm going to launch a poll that I created in Zoom. I really like this group today, and I'm going to share it with other collective members to help prioritize that, right? So we've been able to collect feedback on pain points, challenges, opportunities. Today we're going to talk about pain points specifically, and challenges. But I'd really like the collective members, and I would like you all to help prioritize that. So I also wanted to say, not to overthink it. There's a lot of detail. There's a lot of summary and a lot of grouping I had to do. And there's an opportunity for you to go in and to provide more detail too. So first, I'm going to just share with you kind of this map of the feedback I got. And then I'm going to go into the Zoom poll, where you'll be able to go through 4 simple questions and five, and help prioritize that for us, and just to give some feedback. So let me share my screen. All right, and if you see here, we have, I'm trying to zoom out a little bit, was able to use this tool just to group together and to map out some of the feedback and information that's been obtained from the different pillars, as well as just some interview or conversations that I've been collecting. So what kind of rose to the top was these 4 priority areas that I thought I could place in some common themes. So the first theme was general policies that inhibited housing in the IE, and it resonated more with suburban areas. And that was looking at, overall fees, vehicle miles traveled, parking, as well as the density um, the density bonus, and there was, you know, feedback that was given, solutions and stuff like that. We're not going to go into that now, just kind of common themes of where these pain points were when we talked about policies and that inhibited the production of housing. The next thing that came out was housing continuum conversation. So looking at, you know, evaluating, there wasn't enough housing, even home ownership, or opportunities for people to create affordable, or to create affordable home ownership, units too, or single family residence. There was some conversation about accessing, like grant application, asking for this housing continuum flow, allowing that interaction between nonprofits. And that is a policy recommendation, but just linked well with our housing continuum conversation. And creating, and then a lot of conversation about creating mortgages or down payment assistance, or even types of loans that could be used for innovative housing, such as manufactured homes. So a lot of discussion around our housing continuum. There's a lot of discussion in terms of pain points about equitable funding in our region. And oh, sorry, we have someone that, oh, I'll mute you. Okay. All right. The next was looking at equitable regional funding. That conversation and feedback really surrounded the state funding from HCD, but also just private funding opportunities, public funding opportunities. Looking at investment guidelines, looking at place areas ready, you know, poised and ready to pull down, receive, and deploy those funds. And then a lot of conversation trended towards infrastructure, lack of infrastructure, such as transportation, that greatly contributed to one's ability to receive funding, right? The next was timelines, like volatile timelines, timelines that aren't necessarily flexible, that we can count on. There's a lot of issues with we're experiencing with like utilities, or cities not having the policies ready for developers, or cities not having the ability to implement, to roll out, or having that training time. And also with that, just timing of funding too, right? Where does funding affect our timelines, our ability to accelerate funding, to deploy, to obtain, stack, and start building units? And so these were the themes, the top themes that came about from some feedback from our pillars, from one-on-one conversations. And I still think there's more, and there's an opportunity in this poll to kind of elaborate on that too. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to launch just this poll, and I would like you guys to take some time just to prioritize that, right? What makes, for you specifically, what is the biggest priority for these pain points? What hits you the hardest? What's the most challenging? And then we're going to move down into two sections where you can say, this is most where we'll talk about the prioritization within each of these identified priorities. So let me launch this. I've only done this once before, so just bear with me with the polls. All right, so does everyone see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So let's prioritize. So just real quick, between these three, you know, policies, inhibiting policies, housing continuum, equitable funding, or volatile timelines, which one is the most challenging, the least challenging, somewhat challenging? I recognize, and I think everyone recognizes, these are all priorities, but we're just trying to see, or these are all challenges, but we're just trying to prioritize. So.
Melanie, I think I lost it. I don't see it anymore. Was it answering the first 4 questions?
Oh, so just wait, I haven't moved on to the
I
next.
see.
Yeah. Oh no,
Okay.
you can. You could scroll down. Sorry, you
Oh,
can scroll
I
down.
scroll down.
Yeah, scroll down and you could look. So sorry. Again, I'm sorry. I've only done this once before, so it was a little. Do you guys see it?
No, I
Okay.
don't see it.
Don't.
Okay. Well, you know what I'm going to do is I'll also, this is going into another survey tool that I'm going to send out to everyone after. So if you aren't able to answer it on here, I do have it in another survey form. I just wanted, while I had folks in front of me, I wanted to allocate a little bit of time to just get some immediate feedback. So I'll send it to you. If you don't see it in front of you, I'm sorry, I don't know how to get it, resend it or make it live without affecting others, but I will resend, and it's 5 simple questions. So it shouldn't be a problem. But I'll follow up and send that survey to you all. Maybe I'll do 2 more minutes. That works. It's okay. Yeah, I think I realized that. Thank you, David. I think I have a lot of folks to answer. Number 1 is answered by a lot of folks. it trickles down. So I think folks pressed in, and that's totally fine. I have it. That's why I did a backup survey, because I knew there wouldn't be folks on here. So I'm going to send it out so that I could get some feedback on priorities on this. You guys can help lead that on what you think is most important and what is least, although I think they all are. We're just trying to see what are kind of our top ones. So please look for that. I'll send that out sometime tomorrow if you haven't yet done it. So I'll do, it's 57. I'll do, let's say 2 more minutes. 50, 59 we'll stop, and we're going to transition to some pillar updates for folks. And then I'll have David go first for increasing regional involvement for pillar updates. So we'll do at 1:59. We'll pivot to that. Cool. So I'll do a quick share just for everyone who's still on. So I may have structured the poll incorrectly, but 100% of everything is important on our first prioritization. So I'll need to just ensure that that is true. But we did get, oh, sorry, no, I see. Never mind. We have a strong lean towards equitable funding, and next is our policies and just the access to in the housing continuum. Next is in terms of drilling down or thinking of policies. We have a lot of I mean, we don't have enough to conclude this, but just based off these initial answers, majority say the permitting, school developer fees, as well as parking and BMT. So, and infrastructure density bonus was not as important. Let's see, what is the most important? Is the blue? Yeah. So actually, it's infrastructure for this. And then lastly, okay, so then housing trust, pipeline, and place-based initiatives to receive and deploy funds. So for equitable fund. So cool. All right, well, we're going to send this out still to folks and get more feedback and more help prioritizing these. So now I want to take this time to move on to just our general updates about our pillars. We all, not all, a lot of the pillar work was relaunched this month. And there is a busy 4 months coming up. So within this pillar updates, I'm going to include Jay, who is our new hire, who's in, he's going to update us about the Bank on Coalition when we get to that spot. But I know David has a timeline, so I'm gonna have David go first for our increasing regional involvement.
Well, thanks, Melanie.
Mhm.
The pillar that we're talking about here is expanding regional involvement with the Inland SoCal Housing Collective and reaching out to other maybe what some could consider non-traditional organizations or industries to join us in our efforts to educate and inform and advocate about housing and home ownership. We had I had an opportunity last week to speak with the nursing students at RCC at Riverside Community College about this topic and how it is impossible to separate housing from health. And it was part of their research project to do this, and had them out here at Habitat to discuss with me the challenges that we see from our end, but also from their end, how they maybe perceive something and really don't think about it until it's with them. Some of the numbers of children who are raised in homes that are constantly moving, and the degree of health challenges that they have versus someone who is raised in a stable environment. And so we had that topic that we shared a lot about and discussed, and they shared some of the things that they have found in their classwork. And that was very interesting. But my point of bringing that up now is that this is a perfect example of an industry that you may not think about being connected to housing. This is, RCC's nursing program, and having an open mind to who may be or may not be connected initially to housing. It's hard not to connect just about any industry or organization and how it impacts or is impacted by affordable housing. So it's a reminder to you to keep an open mind about reaching out to other organizations and industries to join the collective in our efforts here. And Damien, you had something to share about this pillar as well. Do you want to do that at this point?
Sure, only that I had happened to have a meeting with the Weingart Foundation, and they have somebody scheduled for their housing justice work specifically, and they're interested in being more connected to the collective.
That would be a great resource, and to have them plugged in, that'd be great. Melanie, that's all I had, unless there are some questions from anyone about our pillar and some of our activities, or something that they may suggest or want to bounce something off of us.
Out of this pillar, we've actually been able, the collective has established a partnership with IREN, also too, the Inland Regional Energy Network. And so we're working with them and partnering with them. And also, I'm sure you've seen it past 6 months in some of the newsletters about their education and training they're rolling out in terms of Title 24 and the updates that will be coming January 2026 and the implications of that for building and for redevelopment work. So the collective is partnering with them so that way we could get information out to developers, especially our developers in the region, right? To inspectors, to cities, to in the planning departments. So and then also electricians and GCs and even looking into like some architects, right, into this housing space. So that way we're prepared in terms of planning what this pivot is and the costs and the benefits that it could bring to providing, ongoing safe and decent housing for our folks in our community. So please be, on the lookout for that. We actually have one of the instructors coming next month to talk about that and to just talk about general implications of that and what we can as the region and in housing space look for and the implications of Title 24. So that's an additional like non-traditional partner that we have an MOU with that we're working with to be a sounding board and to provide feedback and then help deploy information and ensure it gets out to our region. So yeah. Next, can we have Jay, will you go ahead and provide an update for the Bank On Coalition? And then if you also want to just roll into the wealth building, I know I didn't mention that, but the wealth building, we both had that. So just a quick intro, Jay Miller joined us in November. And he is our new Associate Director and Bank On Coalition lead. So there's two of us now, which is great. We've been able to increase our capacity and our work a little bit. And Jay's been helping me catch up too in all things collective. So I'm very appreciative of him and his contribution thus far. So he's leading out our wealth building and preservation pillar as well as our Bank On Coalition. So thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thank you, Melanie. It's been great working with Melanie here and with all of you, getting to know each of you. And I still have a lot of questions as we're going through the process of coming up to speed with this. But I see a lot of opportunities to help move forward especially the wealth building as well as the Bank On program here in the Inland Empire. There's a big need for this, and I appreciate what David said about housing being related to health. I was just recently spent several years with Loma Linda University Health and saw a lot of that firsthand, how they two tie together very, very neatly. And I also had asked David a little while ago, what can you do for a family that comes to you and wants to build a home or work with you to get a home, and they have no bank account, no financial background? And he said, we can't work with a family like that. They have to start at the point of opening a bank account, getting an established credit history, and getting a little bit of financial documentation under their belt before and certainly some financial literacy training as well. And so that's where the Bank On Coalition comes in. And you heard Doni talk about the state looking at this as well, because the state of California is concerned, as well as the CFE that's sponsoring the Bank On program and the coalitions around the nation. There are just too many people out there who are not utilizing the tools that we have made available in our banking and finance system. And for good reason. A lot of them, it's very high fees or it's confusing. Excuse me. But one of the most basic things is we've found that a lot of people just like seeing a friendly face every few days when they go in to cash their check at a check cashing location or a payday loan or something like that. And so we're working with many local institutions. It's very exciting to see how many have come on board just in the last year. I'm finishing up a matrix, and then Melanie and I are looking at how we can create a map of the whole region here. And as I've said to others, our region is very large. It's like a state that we're trying to serve. And so if it feels busy to you, it is because we are a very large region. And with the wealth building, certainly the bank on program where people start a checking account is a first step, but it's not the final step. And then we have several more steps that we want to help have many of our partners lead people through the process of saving up for a down payment, of getting the assistance that they need with down payments or other types of programs into an affordable unit, and then beginning to have some equity build up that they can fall back on and rely on, and also planning for the inevitable expenses that come with home ownership as well, and making sure that they're on the path to uh, financial stability versus a hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck type of existence that so many in our communities are living on right now. And there's a lot more to talk about, but a lot of exciting things happening. And definitely keep letting me know of other connections that you find within our community, for profit, nonprofit, government agencies, anyone out there that is a touch point for people in need of a bank account, because there are many, many different situations, and none of us touch all the people. None of us touch all the foster youth, the justice involved, the immigrants, the battered women in a shelter, the veterans, or the homeless coming out of homelessness. So a whole range of different people are connected through different organizations, and we need all of them on board to be able to help direct people into this funnel to get them into the first step and then take the next steps on beyond that.
Thank you, Jay. So we were able to have our monthly pillar meeting for our wealth building and preservation, which covers all things like bank on, but also financial education and looking at mortgage readiness, everything that is included in our goals and to build wealth, right? Preserve wealth. And then we also already launched our first Bank on Coalition meeting as a subset now of this pillar work, and we've already gone full head of steam. I mean, full head. We've Jay's already. We haven't published it yet, but reevaluated all the new accounts for our region, certified accounts. We have, I think, 10 new accounts that have been certified this past year, which is awesome. And so we're going through a lot of data researching, looking at financial institution, the basically financial institution desert areas of in the subregions of the IE. And I have already started working towards planning our Bank on Forum in April, which is looking like it'll be April 9th. So keep that on your calendars if you'd like to attend. We will be hosting it in San Bernardino County, and we'll release the location date soon. So thank you, Jay, for leading out that work and getting the ground running and doing that for us. So I'm very excited about that. And then if you are not yet a part of that coalition and would like to do that, please reach out to Jay. If you could put your email in the chat, Jay, I'd appreciate that. That way folks can connect with you quite easily if they don't yet have your email. But moving on to the next pillar, Ayako, do you want to go ahead and lead out for expansion of housing solutions?
Sure. Thank you, Melanie. Ayako Tsumi here, Expansion of Housing Solutions. We meet the second Thursday of each month from 9 to 10 a.m. Second Thursday, 9 to 10 a.m. And our focus relies our focus is right now around mostly home ownership preservation, given the number of mortgages that are still at risk for foreclosure, even with all of the various foreclosure prevention activities the bank and the state have undergone. We do feel that there are a fair number of mortgage holders who are at risk. So therefore, we wanted to get the word out of the state's home HAF, homeowner. I forget what that stands for. Anyway, it's up to $80,000 in mortgage assistance to qualified mortgage holders. So it includes property taxes and other what you might consider non-traditional foreclosure prevention assistance. So we do want to get the word out to your respective email networks. Melanie, would you mind posting the HAF poster for us so that people would have the link to the poster to again send out to get the word out? I would say a particular interest are seniors with reverse mortgages. We know that lately a number of home owners insurance companies have left the state, and there are fewer left, and the insurance premiums are doubling, tripling in some cases, and that may be unaffordable for a senior on a limited income. So if they don't keep their homeowner's insurance current, then their reverse mortgage then becomes at risk, and the bank may call it in. And there are some more predatory lenders who may call in a reverse mortgage without taking the time to deal more directly with the senior homeowner. So we want to make sure that our seniors are protected the best that we can. So again, there is up to $80,000 available in mortgage and mortgage prevention assistance. So please do get that word out. I want to thank NPHS and HSIE, credit.org, for helping to get the word out at several sessions we've already had. We've had 4 or 5, right, Melanie? Okay, and around the county, we would like to go up into Victorville and to the more non-urban areas to also get the word out, since they have fewer dedicated home counseling resources in the more rural areas. So if you have ideas on how to do that, please do contact Melanie or me. We also, going back to the senior outreach, if any of you have relationships with a local senior center or other lower income senior outreach opportunity, please do let Melanie or me know, so that again, we want to get the word out to the most vulnerable. And we will continue to have these mortgage relief outreach sessions on evenings and weekends through the rest of the year. Next, I wanted to review our focus on ensuring that we continue to network with one another. So for the past couple years, we've hosted first we call it business speed dating. Now we're calling it networking. But we hope to host another one this year. When is it again, Mel? March?
March 14th. March 14th at Talk to Spring, the Civil Rights Institute in Riverside.
Great.
Yep.
The same one. Rose Mays is on. I see that. So it was a great venue along with the museum, and there's a new exhibit at the museum, Civil Rights Museum. So it would be a very special place for us to convene. Again, making those connections, expanding our networks, ensuring that the word gets out of what affordable housing needs to be built and what all the organizations involved, what we're all doing, so we can ensure that we raise the profile of the Inland Empire for affordable housing. So we do hope you will come out for that, and more information will be coming out shortly. And lastly, another area of focus is expanding housing solutions for homeless. So we will be taking that up a little bit more this year as well. In the 2 years past, we wanted to focus on the Project Home Key funds, trying to get the word out, trying to get connections, developers, builders, different consultants to put those teams together if your development firm isn't already vertically integrated or have the vertical relationships to do a substantial development. But it turns out, it looks like Project Home Key will not be refunded this year. They have some kind of a substitute, which is yet to be determined, but we know with the budget, very significant budget deficits for the state, we don't know how much or when that homeless housing money will come out. So we will stay on top of that, but again, hoping to make these matches so that more development can occur, especially for homeless housing. And thank you. I will turn it back over to Melanie.
Thank you so much. So next we have just our policy pillar, our educate and advocate for public policy. And our chair isn't on today. She is at another meeting. So our new chair for this pillar is Taylor from National Corps. We just had our first meeting this past month. And we had changed the date. So if you weren't able to attend, I'm very sorry. We had to change it, push it back a week because the first Tuesday of the month would have been January 2nd. And it was just too hard to try and pull off with folks being in the new year. I didn't want to do that to folks. So we pushed it back, which I know made it wonky for others, but I'm hoping to see familiar faces on the February meeting. We were able to talk about some of the accomplishments of last year, and then moving forward for this year, what did we want to aim to do? One of our priorities is to provide information, education around affordable housing and efforts to provide helpful information for ACA 1 when it comes to the ballot and when it comes to November and it's time to vote on that. And that is, again, if you're not familiar with that, that is looking at lowering the voter threshold to approve a housing bond. So currently it's at a 2/3 vote, so a small minority can squash the process of a housing bond created at a local level. So ACA 1 is the constitutional amendment, which will allow still majority, but lower it to 55% as opposed to 2/3. So it has the opportunity to unlock funds to build affordable housing in local areas. It's all done at a local jurisdiction level. So additionally, with this, we're going to be looking at advocating on doing some advocacy work or just more of some information sharing with our local electeds about Cal Home and the utilization here in our region and how successful it is. I'm sure this will lead to an additional, to lead to some letters to support in terms of the budget, to support funding some of these some of the housing programs from HCD, but also Cal Home. So we will be working on that, especially with some cuts that we know about right now. We'll be advocating on behalf of the region to ensure that funding is allocated to housing and that we're able to access some of that. We also talked about the realization that there was a lot of great stuff for housing that was been approved that came through last year. It's just now funding. So really it's, trying to get these new policies down implemented at a local level. We talked about how we can do that and how we could support local jurisdictions, local cities in doing that. And then the discussion came back to funding, what funding resources we have to actually move and build and leverage these policies. So a lot of great discussion. So if you would like to join that, you could reach out to me and I can connect you to Taylor and we'll get you into that pillar also for Educate and Advocate. And that meets on the first Tuesday of every month at 10, from 10 to 11. So right now we have 5 minutes left, but I just wanted to leave this as an open forum. If anyone has general updates, anything happening, please feel free. We have 5 minutes where we can open it up to just general sharing. So if there's anyone here, if not, too, if you need to jump off, this is, you can also do so too. But I want to appreciate everyone for coming and coming to the first meeting of the year. And I see folks. So I saw Maribel's hand pop up, and then we'll do Ayako. Maribel?
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year, 2024. I'm Maribel Nunez with Inland Equity Community Land Trust. I just wanted to send out an invitation and send out an email to a couple of you guys in this group and Melanie. I'm in partnership with the Hispanic Coalition of Small Businesses. There's a housing forum coming up in February here in Riverside and Cesar Chavez Center. So you're going to have like a diverse set of stakeholders, banks, nonprofits, folks that do ADU, all that good stuff. We were invited to be part of the panel so that, we're also hearing about community land trust, right, as a pathway for home ownership. So I don't know if Melanie, if you could send it out within the listserv, but I could put on the chat the flyer and the RSVP if anybody wants to sign up. But yeah, we really want to get the word out and get folks to join us and be part of the dialogue and thinking about multiple ways and that we can build home ownership. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you, Maribel. I'll make sure to put it in our next newsletter. It's in February, right? You said February
13th. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So we'll be able to put it in at least 2 rounds of newsletters too. So yeah, I'll make sure to get that out to folks. So thank you. Go ahead, Ayako.
Can I go? Okay. Ayako Tsumi again here with Mary Erickson Community Housing. Just wanted to share that we are developing 7 detached single-family homes for sale, first-time home buyers to 80% AMI, 80. And in Northwest Riverside County, they'll be available early 2025. And just real quick, an 80% AMI family of 4 can afford what mortgage if interest is 7.5%? Okay, in the interest of time, I'll tell you, it's $145,000 mortgage if you include utilities. So what does a $145,000 mortgage buy in Southern California, even in the IE? What does it buy you? Not much. That's right. So that's why home ownership for lower income is such an important part of the work that we do. So if you know U.S. veterans who are low income, the project has a preference for veterans. Please do send them my way or to Melanie. We want to make sure that we have 7 veteran households to buy these new low-income homes, and down payment assistance will be provided. We're partnering, hopefully, with NHSIE and NPHS to make this project happen for our veterans. We will have an event this Saturday at the Pass Area Veterans Resource Center, and on February 9th for the Riverside County Veterans Legislative Breakfast. I sent the information to Melanie and she'll send that out in the newsletter. Thanks, everyone. Veterans low-income home ownership.
So I just wanted to remind you, ironically, I sent all the information everyone just talked about in the newsletter. You should have gotten it at, I think, 6 a.m. this morning. So I was up at 6, just hitting send. So so you should go ahead and look in your spam folders if you don't see it, or junk folders. It was scheduled to go out at that time, so you should have that, and we will continue to put it in up until the time of those events, right? So let's see. One thing I wanted to bring also in that newsletter, if you see it, Housing California is hosting their quarterly town hall, and they're going to be focusing on some policy stuff. I find their town halls extremely beneficial and informative. So in the newsletter, I have the link and registration. It's January. I want to say it was January 26th that week, but I just looked and that's a Friday, and I don't know if they had planned on a Friday. I thought it was a Thursday. So it's either the 25th or 26th of January. So make sure to register that if you have time to jump on. It's usually very informative. I find it very helpful. So, and I think, cool. Okay, so awesome. We have some of the event stuff in the chat. So, if there's nothing else to share, again, I just wanted to, yep. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you so much, everyone, for jumping onto the meeting. I look forward to seeing you guys next month or sooner.
Thank you,
Take care.
Melanie.